Right now, as we are talking to one another, there's a debate all over the internet about whether you should say the words Christ is king and whether saying that is somehow an attack. And there's been a lot of back and forth about how if it's said to a Jewish person as like a, New York Giants suck, if there's an implication that this is the only, right? Like what, if you believe differently, then you're bad, then it's provocative and it's using the Lord's name in vain. Whereas if you just state it as this is my belief, this is my religion, this is what's in my heart, it's something totally different. But every day there's a debate like this going on in our news and our social media and so on. Have you seen that latest?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I have a little bit. I just become aware of it. And a couple of things I'd say. One is the Feast of Christ the King within the Catholic Church was instituted in the early 20th century precisely by the popes who were recognizing the rise of fascism, and which often had a very deeply anti-Semitic quality. And they saw the danger of fascism was a deification of the state. So that's trouble with all forms of totalitarianism. The state becomes absolutized. In saying, no, Christ is king, they're putting a moral and spiritual authority over the state. The fact that we're one nation under God, that's not just pious boilerplate. That's a very important intuition, that all of our political leaders, all of our institutions, all of our laws are finally under God, under God's judgment. Well, that's what Christ the King means. Here's the second thing I mentioned already, when the first proclaimers of the resurrection said, Jesus Kyrios, Jesus is Lord. But look at the deep irony of that. To construe that as, okay, Caesar, you're out, and there's a new Caesar who's defeated you on your own terms, that's missing the whole point. The fact that Pilate, who put over the cross of Jesus, Jesus Nazarenus Rex Judaeorum, right? Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. Well, we're meant to see the tremendous irony in that, is the one who has no worldly authority, the one who has no worldly power, no worldly honor, just the opposite, is the one who, in fact, is the king. So it's not playing the old game of, us against them, or I'm going to fight your king on his own terms and take his place. It's a revolution. It's a renewal of understanding. If you miss the irony of the declaration that Christ is king, you're missing the whole story. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So that's why your point about, hey, you guys, you're no good, and I'm on the winning team. That's missing all the irony of this naked man pinned to a cross, bereft of any of the goods of the world, and he's rightly declared to be the king.
I'm sure you saw the Politico White House correspondent speaking out on religion on MSNBC in a way that talk about completely missing it. She was outraged. Right. I guess she's never read any of our founding documents or attended a mass, but she was outraged that there are some of us who believe that our inalienable rights come from God and not from men. And she made, I think it's fair to say, international headlines and was almost universally condemned for the following nonsense that she spewed. I'll play it in part in soundbite 3.
Right? Remember when Trump ran in 2016, a lot of the mainline evangelicals wanted nothing to do with the divorced, real estate mogul who had cheated on his wife and with a porn star and all of that, right? So what happened was he was surrounded by this more extremist element. You're going to hear words like Christian nationalism, like the new apostolic Reformation. These are groups that you should get very schooled on, because they have a lot of power in Trump's circle. And the one thing that unites all of them, because there's many different groups orbiting Trump, but the thing that unites them as Christian nationalists, not Christians, by the way, because Christian nationalists is very different, is that they believe that our rights as Americans, as all human beings, don't come from any earthly authority. They don't come from Congress. They don't come from the Supreme Court. They come from God. The problem with that is that they are determining men are determining what God is telling them.
So only this weird group of Christian nationalists believes that. Got it, Bishop? It's just these weirdos who think rights come from God, not Christians. They don't believe. Anyway, your thoughts on Heidi Przybyla and her thoughts on Christianity.
Yeah, I spoke out against her when I first came across that. And on her reading, I guess Thomas Jefferson would be a Christian nationalist. But see, again, that's not just pious boilerplate when Jefferson says that these inalienable rights of ours come from the Creator. If they come from Congress and the Supreme Court, then they can be taken away. And you see that, of course, in the totalitarianisms of the 20th century. It's exactly what happened. If rights are doled out by the state can take them back. Jefferson's claim there is so important because he places the whole governmental enterprise under the judgment of God, under the authority of God. When we forget that, we are in very serious political danger. See, totalitarianism is, I think Reagan had that right. It'll come more likely through that kind of liberalism. It'll sneak the totalitarian perspective in through the back door. That's a very dangerous perspective. Not just wrong-headed, it's dangerous.
It used to be so different. You know, I mean, we've had so many references to God in the public square from, go and look, go to the Supreme Court, look at our founding documents. It used to be a non-issue. It would have been strange if we didn't have it. You look at how America was when it was founded. It was a very religious country, very Christian country. And now, I mean, I feel like if those founding fathers could get a glimpse at 2024 America, they truly would not recognize it. And one of the ways in which they wouldn't recognize it is the absence of religion, how it's been shoved out of the public square and even more and more out of the private square, out of people's homes. And in its place, not only do we get wokeism and depression and anxiety, we get, forgive me for sounding 200, but debauchery. You know, we get more and more public nudity and sexual acts on parade in front of kids in the public square and things that, you would never want your child to see, nor your own innocent eyes. But it's, you're scrolling Twitter and there it is. You're just channel surfing and there it is. And then you walk to the public library and there it is. I think these things are definitely linked. And I do think are a source of real consternation for many of us.
Absolutely. And again, if God's kicked out, something will move into that central place. In our context, you might say it's our own freedom. It's the autonomy of the ego becomes godlike. And that's something I've noticed even in the course of my lifetime, how that language has become so intensified. Roe v. Wade, the abortion debate had a lot to do with it, but broaden that out across the board, that I have the right, the privilege, the capacity to determine, what did Casey versus Planned Parenthood say? The meaning of my own life, indeed the meaning of the universe. It's the most breathtaking claim ever made by the U.S. Supreme Court was Casey versus Planned Parenthood. But see, that view is now trickled down to every teenager in America practically. Is my ego, it has a godlike power to determine my gender, to determine value, to determine the purpose and meaning of my life, rather than discovering the great goods by which my life ought to be directed. And that was traditionally the role of religion. Education too, but I'd say primarily religion was to teach the hierarchy of values in relation to which our lives become meaningful. And again, to use the maybe corny golf example, but that you find a teacher, you find a mentor who knows golf and knows the moves of the golf swing and can place it within your own ambit, in your mind, in your body. If you just say, well, I'll swing any way I want, who are you to tell me what to do? Well, great, but you'll be the worst golfer in the world. But the same, is true of the moral life and the spiritual life. I'll decide the meaning of my life. Well, all right, you can do that, I suppose, but you'll have a miserable life. The Bible, by the way, knew all about this. It's called the original sin. So symbolically, eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is saying, I appropriate to myself the knowledge of good and evil. I will determine good and evil, where that's only what God can do, which is why that tree is forbidden. It's not God being difficult or being tyrannical. It's acknowledging the metaphysical truth that God is the ground of meaning and purpose. And then he says, look, once you know that, eat of all the trees you want. See, and that means live your life to the full. Have a richly human life at all levels, but don't arrogate to yourself the determination of good and evil. I think that's what we see a lot in our culture today. And it's partially the result of a breakdown in religion. Yeah.
It's all around us. I mean, you can't turn on the television today without getting something very graphically R-rated, to put it mildly. Financial experts thought we were in the clear. They were anticipating around 6 rate cuts by the Fed this year, and then the inflation data came out higher than expected. This isn't going away anytime soon. How could it? The U.S. is $34 trillion in the hole, and yet we just keep on printing money, which pushes the prices you pay every day even higher. So you can either bury your head in the sand or you can do something about it. One option to consider is to diversify a portion of your savings into gold with Birch Gold Group. Gold can be your hedge against inflation, and Birch Gold makes it easy to own. They will help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold, and you don't pay a penny out of pocket. Text Megyn to 989898 and get your free info kit on gold. Then speak with a precious metal specialist about how you can choose to protect your savings from persistent inflation with gold. Text Megyn, M-E-G-Y-N, to 989898 now. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.